Hello and welcome to Media Lit, where we treat each piece of media like great literature. I am your host, Randy Elaine, and joining me in the classroom, as always, is my beloved co-host, Kris Ingersoll. Kris, how you doing tonight?
So good, Randy. It's a pleasure as always to come to the classroom to sit before you, the teacher. So happy to be here. We're going to talk a little bit about Alan Cumming tonight, not because of a certain recent announcement on the back of a certain type of chair, but for an entirely different reason reaching way back into the past that we'll get to. But I'm always excited to talk about Alan Cumming. So let's do this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a regular listener, you might notice me playing up the classroom aspect of the show a little bit more than usual. It's part of the concept. That is the origin story of the title of this very podcast. Media Lit was the nickname for a media literacy course that I used to teach at my high school. It's not run in recent years for various reasons, but I missed that course. All the stuff we studied about being someone who is literate when it comes to media. But the thing I missed the most was learning how to read a story really well, digging into those messages built into our entertainment media and our stories. And that is the origin of this podcast. And we've got our most authentic episode ever coming up because our special guests tonight are actual members of the actual media literacy course that inspired this very podcast. Kris, how do you feel about this?
I said it before. I wasn't quite aware of the gravitas that I would feel in the presence of these people tonight. But being here, gathering with these most authentic podlings, I just feel I'm honored, I guess.
As well, you should be. This is a really phenomenal group of folks. And I'm going to take a minute to introduce them one at a time. So first up, we have got Bella Rodrigues, a student who first endeared herself to me by challenging the many flaws of Ernest Hemingway and his treatment of women in his novels. Although I'm told her perspective has additional layers at this point in time. Bella, thank you so much for being here. And what are you up to in life? How are you doing these days?
Mr. Lane, hello. It's nice to be here. Everyone else can chime in later, but we did secretly call you Randy behind your back for many years, I think the entire time we were in high school, but it feels weird to call that to your face. I'm good. I am currently live in Boston. I am a librarian. I'm finishing my degree this semester, this May. Very excited, very exciting to be here. Yeah, and this is a crazy movie that I'm so excited to talk about.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to get back into the classroom with you. Next up, we've got Julia Melloni, another member of the original class. Julia, how are you and what have you been up to in the last, near decade that we've been apart?
Oh my God. Hi. It's so nice to see. I think this is the first time I've seen your face since I graduated, not on like the internet via socials, and this is crazy. It's been good. I'm in New York City now, pursuing the, acting dream, as best I can. I'm a substitute teacher, and a bartender to pay rent. But my real profession that I consider is actually stage combat. So I specialize in like weaponry and combat and fight sequences so that I can make theater actually scary again, because I think it's a little too predictable, which, oh boy, do I have something to say about this movie and the combat sequences in it. Oh wow. Who was in that room, especially for a Lucasfilm production? So can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear any of that either. And you can make theater scary again. Do you know the last time I got to see one of your stage performances? Do you recall?
That was Heather's, right? That was Heather's,
yeah.
2018. God, that was, wow, what a show. So many problems, but fun. I just actually they had an open call for that again, literally a week ago for an off-Broadway, I think, revival, the first time in 10 years, I think, for an anniversary. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do this for the first time since then. No, I'm not.
Listen, I saw what you're capable of. I'm not going to mess with you. And I know
Thank
you've
you.
got that magic for the stage. And Ethan, how have you been doing? We talked a little bit off mic about what you've been up to, and it sounds like you probably have your hands full, but what have you been up to these days?
Hey, I'm happy to be back in the classroom with you, Mr. Elaine, and nice to meet you, Kris. To echo what Bella said, it's strange to call you Randy, despite the fact we did indeed call you Randy behind your back. I still have this vivid memory one day in A-Push when I was talking about an assignment with Bella, and I just said, like, oh, Randy said this, and as soon as I said it, you walked by the classroom and peered your head in, and I felt so ashamed. So to this day, I still have to call you Mr. Elaine, but nope. Happy to see you again. Happy to be chatting. I live and work in DC. I work for a kind of a watchdog research company for political advertising, so definitely never a dull day. Often very depressing to see the amount of money spent on political advertising, but nevertheless, I went to school at George Washington University and I majored in political science and history, which, speaking of history, I'm happy to be diving into such an esteemed entry into the history of film, such as this movie we're reviewing today, Strange Magic.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. And I cannot wait to hear from you. I know you're all going to be full of the same brilliant insights I got to know in the classroom back in the day. Plus, you've got all these extra years of reflection and wisdom. Now, I'm supposed to be the old, wizened teacher, but I think I may remember something that the three of you have forgotten, which is, uh, as Kris will know, because he knows I love an outline, he knows I love a rule and a structure. I am a stickler for students not using my first name, but you were amongst the small group who finally broke me down and just challenged me with it. I caved your senior year, and to this day, the only group that I have fully just allowed and granted permission to call me by my first name because I couldn't fight it anymore. You'd earned it, you deserved it, and whatever you're comfortable with tonight is going to work for me. But yeah, you broke me down, but not through annoyance, but through just making my life as a teacher better. So I could not possibly be happier to be with all of you tonight.
Well, I also could not be happier to be with all of you tonight because I'm like realizing this rare opportunity I have to ask some questions and get to know my dear friend Randy just a little bit more, because I have like my impression of who he is and the kind of teacher I imagine him to be, but you all lived it. So if you're not like too put on the spot, I'd love to ask you a couple of questions. Can you share with me, does Randy have any like catchphrases that he is or is not aware of
Oh,
as
does
a
he?
teacher?
Oh,
We still use them.
oh my gosh. There are so many. We could go on all
Julia
day.
does a really good Randy impression.
I haven't done it in a long time, but I digress is still truly number one. Like, and any tangent, anything, but I digress. And
But I
I was
digress.
like, I'm not a big period. Like, I use it all the time now myself. I think that really worked its way into my psyche.
My favorite is the raucous discussion. I say that all the time, like in my place of work. And I'm like, let's have it's a Kurt Vonnegut quote, right?
No, it's like the one time I was not talking about Kurt Vonnegut, but this is journalist Studs Terkel. Reading should not be a passive exercise; it should be a raucous conversation.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So it's not, well, Nelson Mandela affected that to raucous discussion, and we say that a lot now.
I think you found the operative section, so I give it my stamp of approval.
Yeah, that is
Yep.
perfect. Perfect paraphrasing of a loved teacher. Ethan, you got anything?
Yeah, everything that Julia and Bella said, we did have often a raucous discussion in class, and teaching sophomores, they're not the brightest bunch in the classroom sometimes. So sometimes they would voice an opinion in the classroom, and Mr. Elaine would very politely, but I swear he would always do this the same way. He would just say, like, oh, well, I could maybe see it that way, but like you're trying to get us back on the right track of like what it actually means.
But so generous of spirit. I've heard you say I digress, most certainly on a podcast. Okay. Rapid fire. Funny teacher, scary teacher.
endearing teacher. Like
Aw.
absolutely like fun, like brought the dad energy into the classroom in the best
Okay.
way possible, where it's like, let's talk about why Farewell to Arms is cool. And I was like, yes, I need that right
Okay.
now. Like, you're like, look at these posters. And I'm like, I will look at those posters. Like, this is a fun classroom activity.
Love this. Dad energy, endearing.
Yes.
That sounds absolutely perfect. A lot of homework, a little bit of homework.
He actually, well, when we got the outline, it's like the exact same format we used to get of like outlines for essay prompts. So I kind of opened it and like felt a
Flashed
neuron
back.
fire somewhere that I haven't had in a long time. So that was kind of crazy. But the
Let's key into
assignments were
that.
fun. I still think about like the fun creative writing, the stuff we had to do.
So when that neuron fired, comfort neuron, anxiety neuron.
Oh, definitely like comfort. Like
Okay,
Comfort.
wonderful.
I
Love that.
I liked the assignments. I love writing. Not to get like mushy, but Mr. Lane was like the first teacher where I think I handed something in and you gave it back and was like, you have something here, kid. You didn't say that, but you were very supportive and I was like, whoa, that's cool. I don't know. It was very encouraging.
I'm embracing the Humphrey Bogart, the near Humphrey Bogart quote. I love that. Okay, you kind of get into my last question there. Ethan, tell me, tough grader, easy grader, fair grader?
Mr. Lane is an enigma of a teacher in the sense that he kind of, in my opinion, he borderlines all of the questions you've asked so far, where he not scary, but he could definitely be the fun teacher, the endearing teacher, but sometimes, he can command respect too.
Okay.
There's so many times
Wow.
I was like, maybe I can get away with this. It's Mr. Lane. I cannot. Like, I remember being in a study, like, in media lit, my friends and I tried to have a little fun with one of his outlines. They're like, no, stick to the outline. I'm like, okay. In terms of tough and easy grader, I think it was a really fair grader. I one of my favorite pictures I have from high school I took of my report card was a comment he left me like the second quarter, which was, I totally understand your love of Rugrats. So there's a reason why at the end of the media lit we did the old captain, oh captain, my captain moment, stood up on our desk and
Wow.
I
saluted him.
totally
So
forgot about that.
Wow.
that really can.
How could you forget about that? That was
There-
like, oh my God, we're such
I
babies.
forgot about
There we
that.
go. I'm
Oh
good
my
at the
God.
back.
Wow. So first of all, I'm just even more endeared to you that this was so on deck. I'm glad that this was pulled from your holster like a quick draw. I'm looking at a photo for the podlings at home of like beauty, I guess, is the first word that comes to mind. These students just shared this memory, and I'm looking at photo evidence. These folks are on their desks and they're giving Mr. Elaine the full "Oh Captain, my Captain." I see the beautiful chaos of a high school classroom. There are desks in every which direction. There are posters everywhere. I wish I could see better so I could identify some of those posters. But this looks like a cave of learning. I can't believe they honored you this way, man. This is beautiful.
Yeah, I didn't know like to what extent it was genuine and to what extent it was tongue in cheek, but I did not care because it was literally the best day of teaching,
Dude,
ever.
based on the conversation that I just had, my takeaways from these three folks and the fact that you didn't quite fall into any of the buckets I tried to stick you in. I tried to kind of pin them down and get them to generalize on you a bit, but they couldn't. That just tells me that you are an authentic teacher. You are a good teacher. And so I'm sure this moment was also authentic. Yeah.
Kris, I can't thank you enough for that indulgent walk down memory lane. I really appreciate that. But hey, that's what this podcast is about. It's about connecting with people. And Bella, Julia, and Ethan, way kinder assessment than I ever could have imagined in a zillion years. So thank you so much. Yeah, you are missed every day. It is true.
Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the podcast, do you all have any socials you want to plug? We're trying to get in the habit of letting our guests plug up top instead of waiting until the very, very end. So we'll do a round robin. Bella, we'll start with you. Any socials or any other work you want to plug for people to follow and discover?
I don't really have any personal things, but I just want to encourage everyone listening to check out the ALA, the American Library Association webpage, just because some things are happening in the federal government which are trying to defund libraries and museums and other educational institutions that are really important and not just like affect me as my profession, but all of us and like as the country and preserving history and art. And they've got some good information on that and some petitions to sign. And I just want to kind of plug that.
Great plug. Julia?
Well, I have to follow that, which is like, thanks, Bella. I really appreciate that. Yeah,
You're
do that.
welcome.
That's really important. Advocate.
High roaded.
I'm not gonna totally plug my like acting Instagram or anything like that. Anyway, on my totally selfish note, you should follow my acting Instagram, which is official Julia Melloni. I'm trying to build a little bit of a following there so I can share stuff I've created, reels I'm proud of, funny moments from auditions, and stuff like that. But yes, also, yeah, all that good stuff that Bella said.
I'm excited to see some audition bloopers. That sounds great. Ethan, what do you got?
Myself, kind of a boring guy, not into acting or anything, but to kind of echo what Bella said, we just spent 5 to 10 minutes gushing over how great of a teacher Mr. Lane was. We were very lucky to not only just have him, but so many other amazing teachers in our school district, and it's just worth a shout out as public education and teachers continue to be under attack to just really memorialize and honor those great teachers in our life. In terms of a personal plug, I don't have much, I do not, as heroic and moral as some other works, but I do some reporting on political advertising, which you can find just by going to @Impact's LinkedIn or website. I did a whole report series on the political advertising behind the presidential race, which saw so much money, I believe over $1 billion alone. So, yes, well worth the read.
Indeed. Thank you all so much.
All right. Now, sometimes on this show, once we get through our introductions, I kind of force everyone to like play dumb about what our topic is going to be for like the next 10 minutes. Because we are continuing to ask some like basic background questions, but I don't want to mess around any further. You've heard each of my former students talk about a movie they are very excited to watch. And they can correct me in a moment, but when we talked about what they would want to come on and talk about, we fairly quickly arrived at the 2015 film Strange Magic, which Bella and Julia described as a film they kind of loved to hate watch in high school. It was quite a phenomenon at a formative moment for them when they were really getting into film and television. Ethan claims he did not watch it at the time, so he watched this new alongside Kris and I to like get back in the friend group and into the conversation. But let's learn a little bit about this film. So a couple things I want to point out before I jump into the full-on synopsis is that this film that was released in 2015 was animated by Lucasfilm Animation, and it's the only real thing they've released that is not a Star Wars property. There was also some Industrial Light and Magic work on the animation here. They did some work on the 2011 film Rango, so there's probably a little bit of overlap there. But essentially, this is a strange one-off project that George Lucas started developing in the late 90s, and it didn't really fully come to fruition until 2015. It lost tens of millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
And I should note that George Lucas was really into gendering this film as a movie for 12-year-old girls, which was just like a weird soundbite he kept giving. It may be a strange way to reduce his film, which is a fantasy story about fairies and goblins. But of course, it's also a jukebox musical featuring a blend of music from the 60s through the early 2010s, sometimes in confounding and surprising combinations. But we'll get into that later. For now, For folks who are here for the pod and you've never watched this film, I'm going to hit you with a synopsis and try to capture the strange magic of strange magic. And then the panel can critique me at the end. So here we go. This is one of the most challenging ones I've ever had to write because there's a lot happening here. The film opens on some storybook lore about a magical land split between the fairy kingdom and the dark forest. Magical primroses, the main ingredient for a powerful love potion, grow along the border between the two realms. Next, we meet fairy princess Marianne, fluttering around in a dreamy daze. She is absolutely smitten with her total tool of a fiancé, Roland. This sweet but naive lovesickness instantly dissolves when she sees her betrothed smooching another fairy. Marianne goes through a speedy goth transformation and loses all patience for her lovesick flirt of a sister, Dawn. Nevertheless, she's still willing to save her little sis and her friend-zoned elf friend, Sunny, from a rowdy lizard. While Marianne continues to devote herself to the art of swordplay, Roland tries to win her back. Marianne tells him to go take a hike, but her dad, the king, still finds Roland pretty dreamy and seems very desperate to hand over the monarchy to this sleazy Elvis impersonator. Lacking the riz to win Marianne back, Roland manipulates Sunny into a creepy frat bro date rape scheme. The plan is for Sunny to risk his life to venture into the dark forest and procure a love potion. Then they can force the sisters they love to marry them, and Roland won't have to break a sweat or mess up his hair. It gets worse and worse the more you think about it. Sunny bumbles into the forest and basically fails his way to the top with the help of a possum that we are later told is not a possum, but an imp. Sunny finds and frees the captured Sugar Plum Fairy in return for a love potion. The Sugar Plum Fairy is almost instantly recaptured, but Sunny makes it home just in time for the spring dance. Not to be confused with the spring ball from a few scenes earlier. By the way, Sunny's little mission has absolutely enraged the badass ruler of the Dark Forest, the Bog King. He does not want any love potions messing up law and order in his land, so he crashes the spring dance with his goblin goons and kidnaps Princess Dawn. She won't be returned until the fairy kingdom locates the love potion and returns it to the dark forest. Unfortunately for the Bog King, young Dawn got a face full of love potion right before she was kidnapped. As soon as she's released from her burlap sack and sets eyes on the Bog King, she is smitten. She nearly breaks him with her saccharine, sweet musical stylings. Marianne sets off to take care of business, while her dad tries to impress her ex-fiancé by handing him an entire fairy army. What could go wrong? Meanwhile, that troublesome imp starts love potioning people left and right. He ignites all sorts of unlikely romances, including a surprising throuple. Sunny, his elf bro, and that scary lizard that tried to eat our heroes earlier in the film. While everyone else is messing around, Marianne goes straight for the Bog King, and they flirt fight so hard that the Bog King's mother, Griselda, realizes that her little guy might finally be in love. It turns out he isn't really so bad, he's just heartbroken, and has declared war on love instead of feeling his feelings. One final glance at Marianne's purple butterfly wings seals the deal, and our curmudgeonly new couple take off on an enchanted flight through the forest set to the title track from Electric Light Orchestra. Before the happy new couple can resolve things peacefully, the flighty Sugar Plum Fairy runs them around in circles for a while before explaining that true love can overpower a love potion. Then that damned elf army shows up and Marianne has to rescue her sister and convince her new boyfriend that this wasn't all a ruse. She really likes him. Also, by the way, Dawn really does love Sunny, apparently. She is freed from the power of the love potion, and Sunny is freed from the friend zone. But now Dawn has to convince her big sis to admit that she is in love with her dark prince, the Bog King. And she does let him know in the only way possible, a psychedelic, kaleidoscopic, acid trip musical number. Everyone lives happily ever after, and Roland makes out with a bug. Beauty truly is in the eye of the beholder. That might be the greatest thing I've ever written. But what are your notes?
I'm hype. I'm so hype.
Yeah, it's like one of the most. I think you loved this movie. It's one of the more detailed and thoughtful synopsis you've done for any property we've covered.
On top of that, this movie is probably one of the harder movies to summarize, up there with like Babylon and Madam Web. So nicely done.
One thing that I thought was nicely apparent throughout your synopsis, it was apparent how very little magic is actually in the movie titled Strange Magic. There's a love potion and not another spell cast. And you got that beautifully well.
Yeah, it's really just a lot more bugs.
Oh yeah.
And amphibians.
Bugs, trolls, like weird creatures that don't have a name. Mushrooms.
The mushrooms,
The
are
mushrooms
really
are
important.
dope. The mushrooms are great.
Mm-hmm.
News from the mushrooms.
We used to say that was a point I had on my notes. Julia and I used to say that all the time when they're like, news from the mushrooms, sire. That was my best impression.
Yeah.
But we used to say
News
that
from
all
the
the time to each other.
mushrooms.
So.
No, your summary was so well. I forgot like one aspect of it, which was like, which I think maybe I dropped, and maybe I wasn't paying attention to the movie close enough. It's like, I feel the king didn't get a lot of characterization in the movie at all. And maybe, this is something we can discuss later. Like, I felt like he could have played a more interesting role in the movie than he did, in the iteration we watched, where I think he could have created more tension within the plot.
Well, let's get into that. But before we break down the choices that definitely happened in this movie, I want to I think it's time that we dig into your lived experience with this film. So we're going to have a special focus on Bella and Julia for this one.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Bella, Julia, tell me, when did you first see Strange Magic? What were the circumstances? If it wasn't together, then we'll go to Julia first.
So to me, this movie is such a fever dream. And we watched it many times. And we watched it so many times, I don't think I can actually quite remember the first time when I think we were just like looking and we're like, what is this? This looks crazy. Or maybe we saw something and they're like, this certainly is not that bad. And we watched it. And I just remember, like, can't remember if it was on the couch or if it was in Bella's room, but just like sitting there, like total disbelief. Like, surely not. Surely they did not get the rights to all these unbelievable jukebox songs. That's so
The
expensive.
Beyonce copyright is crazy. I
It's
just
got to be crazy.
Like there's Can't Help Falling in Love. Hello? Like there's so many like unbelievable choices. And I just remember thinking like, is this real? Are we alive? And it immediately became oh my God, this is the craziest thing we've ever seen. This needs to become our personalities for the next in many years. And I still show it to my friends to this day. It's insane.
we still watch it like when we are home for Christmas.
It's that special.
Yeah, no, it's our tradition.
I love that. I love that. I can totally picture the vibe, right? That the high school hangout and a thing is so absurdly bad that it becomes great. It becomes wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only thing more fun than a good movie is a really, really bad movie.
100%.
Absolutely. Well, in that spirit, we kind of heard about that first viewing, about the initial shock and surprise. But do you have any other important memories connected to this film, watching it together, or perhaps sharing it with someone new?
I actually do remember the first time I watched this, and it was alone. And I had a fever, and I was like tripping, having a fever. And I remember watching this on the couch, and it was like on cable or whatever. It was like daytime television. And I thought I was like going insane because I was like, this can't be real. The uncanny valley monster fairies are coming to kill me. And I think I must have called Julia like when my fever broke, and I was like, you have to get here right now. We have to watch this again. I think that's what happened.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and of
I
course
did.
immediately, and
I'll look be right there.
and the rest is history.
Fun fact, Bella, that's exactly how I first experienced The Wiz.
Yeah,
Except
that's a
that
good
was
one
more of
too.
like a 3 a.m. fever dream. But yeah, there's nothing quite like it.
No, it was. I'm still scared.
I I pretty much think that the only way I've had more fun watching this movie is like rewatching this movie with like THC in my system.
Yep.
Like watching this movie like as a as a teenager in high school going like that's crazy. But then watching the acid trip sequence at the end after I've had like, a little something something, I'm like, "Oh wow, is this real life? I don't know. That's insane." Like, which is
It's like
wild.
it's like the movie knows what it's doing at that point. It's like you've
Absolutely.
lasted this long. Here's a little
I
treat
wish
for
the
you.
people who made this movie knew what it did for us. And also, like, I just want to say, it's one thing to show Mr. Elaine this movie. Kris, thank you so much for being a good sport and like enduring this horrible movie.
I was fully here for it. Luckily, it's like it's genre, right? It's like give me fairies, give me trolls. But
Mhm.
to your point, the best kind of movie sometimes isn't a great movie. It's like a really bad one. I had
Oh
fun
yeah.
with this. Yeah. Well, okay. So I think I understand more now about how you experienced it at first, Bella. I love that it was like a literal fever dream for you, but then I can see how it became this shared passion. So how did it influence like your friendship, your interests, your style, inside jokes, perhaps? Tell me more about that.
So many inside jokes. I mean, we were in the middle of like peak Tumblr years, when we were watching this movie. And I think it was an immediate, like, oh my God, that was crazy. Look at hashtag strange magic and sending each other the most cursed content we could find. Fan art that should like be bleached out of my brain forever. Like AMVs of the characters, like crack ships, and stuff like
There was a couple
that.
of YouTube videos too, I think.
There's some good stuff. People have, because if there's one thing that I love more than like edits of characters that I love, it's characters of something that I can't stand, and it's hilarious. Like it being treated like so seriously. Um, and I think immediately it just became like this thing that Bella and I would like joke about in the hallway at the cafeteria over text in reference, and no one else knew what the hell we were talking about. So that was pretty fun. Uh, but it was definitely became like our little cheeky, I think, moment.
Yeah, it definitely like I we have always loved genre fiction and stuff, and I love a good fairy tale remix. And I think we had read Midsummer Night's Dream like very recently. So, oh no, we did Midsummer Night's Dream in
I was
drama
gonna
club.
say,
That's what it was.
were
It was
you in the
So
drama
that's
club.
drama
why,
club
yeah, okay.
production?
It's
Yeah.
all coming together. It's all coming together. Yeah. So we had just done, or we're currently doing Midsummer Night's Dream in 2015, in which we had roles. Julia obviously had a bigger role because she's a better actor, but I had a small part.
Oh,
But um, yeah, it definitely was like on track. I think it came at the best point in our lives for that sort of situation, I guess.
Perfect.
That kind of a shared something, especially something that so few other people even know what you're talking about. It's its own kind of strange magic when you're a teenager.
hey,
Roll
He
the
really knows
dice,
how to pull those themes together. You can tell why we're friends.
I wish I had an applause button so I could like give it to you.
snapping in the mic.
Yeah.
Next time we'll have you back. You just prep.
Now you kind of started to answer my next question, but that's kind of a good thing because I may regret saying this, but I need you to ruin my brain forever, and I need to hear the most disturbing fan art you encountered.
So, the most hilarious stuff that really sticks out in my brain is M. Preg Bog King. That's That's really, really sticks out there. We also have Bog King and Roland together, little enemies to lovers moment also. The imp being the main character and having their own thing.
Oh my god, yeah,
There,
people did that. Oh, sorry.
that agent of chaos, dude. No true explanation for that imp. It was just there.
You mean the
Um,
possum?
yeah, the possum.
I think
Uh,
in universe he's called the imp.
uh,
I don't remember.
and I will get into this later. But like a huge amount of just lesbians online who are obsessed with our main lead, who are like, how is this woman not a lesbian? She is the most lesbian looking fairy I've ever seen in my life. But definitely a lot of Mpreg Bog King, which is hilarious. And also just absolutely just cursed fan art, knowing what it is, you know?
Okay, I'll defend. I'll be the defender for a minute. I will say that this is a type of media that I think, and preg stuff aside, and I'm also going on Tumblr right now and looking at some of the old stuff. The fan art is better than the movie, and it seems like the people who liked it and like drew the art. Maybe it's just because it's like 2D and that's way nicer to look at than whatever the hell this was. But they like did their own comics of like when Marianne and the Bog King get married and she's the queen of the dark forest and like they're doing stuff. And so people cared enough to like expound upon the story in ways that I think are better than the movie. But
Now, Bella, do you want to drop your
Okay.
fan fiction link to the ones you
yes,
wrote?
so I will be
Ab-
plugging my AO. It's free.
Yes, please.
Oh,
No, you know.
No, okay. I think that fits. That's about what I was expecting from the fan art for this particular film, right? And I mean, I don't happen to read in this genre, but like we're at the height of romantasy right now. I bet there's no shortage of romantasy authors who had their own special time with this movie back in the day.
Well, I also like I wrote a note down where I was like, this was on the horizon of The Shape of Water and like peculiar romance monster stuff. Like it's like Shape of Water won an Oscar, and I love that movie by the way. But and I think that's where there's like obviously something good about this movie that catches our fascination. Like it has some sort of good bones to it. And I think the Bog King is like the best part in that way because that's the interesting bit is like him and Marianne and like the ugly part of the dark forest is obviously like the best part of the movie. I think everything else is where it falls apart, but it was on the like right on the beginning of everyone kind of having that trend of like the monster bad guy is the love interest, like Shape of Water. So not that the fish guy is the
Yeah.
bad guy.
I think it's also right at the peak, I'd say, of like edgelord fascination in our male leads. Like
Yeah.
this,
It's
what like
2015.
2015, like Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco,
They were having
21
renaissance, yeah.
Pilots. Like there was a really big obsession with like with the I'm not like other
Low-key.
girls trend
Yeah.
and like I'm the dark prince, too edgy for everyone else. Very Ebony, Darkness, Raven, Dementia, whatever. Like, you know, and I think that one of the reasons why this movie like was put like took that direction is because of that influx of like specifically like not like other girls, strong female lead and stern but sensitive, edgy man
Yeah.
who fall in
Yeah.
love.
Someone was cooking on that writing team, on that storyboard team, but
It was meth they were cooking. They were cooking meth.
they were cooking love potions.
I'll admit I was group texting with these folks as I was watching the film, and about 2/3 of the way through the film, I texted, "I think I might love this movie in a strange way." I then proceeded to give it 1.5 stars on Letterboxd. Yet I still think I maybe do kind
You
of love
can't
it.
give it 5 stars.
1.5. One and a
Well,
half.
yes.
But
Yeah.
before Kris takes us out of the segment, Ethan, can I hit you with a surprise question?
Go for it.
Because, you are a newbie like Kris and I, but I wanted to frame this as a looking back question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing these stories from your longtime friends, does this like reverse engineer a better understanding of your friends? Hearing about this experience they were having behind the scenes as you were sharing other experiences together, does this jive with the Bella and the Julia you've always known?
First off, thank God I wasn't included in this back in 2015. No, but secondly, this perfectly
Would have
tracks with
loved
it.
it.
I do remember once like I started joining that friend group a little bit more. One of the first movies that indoctrinated me was like this Barbie princess movie. Like that was
Princess
straight
and
to
the Popper,
VCR.
get it straight.
Princess and a Popper.
That one, yes.
And that is a 5-star movie, no notes. You
and
can't even
Bella
have a podcast about that movie because it's perfect.
Bella and I have also watched a string of interesting movies, such as the animated Adventures of Mark Twain movie, which is a true total meth in any other LSD
Yeah, we
like
gotta do that one
strip.
next.
Now, that would scare our viewers away.
Awesome. I'm also grateful for you, Ethan, that you missed out back in 2015. I think we now have a pretty decent understanding of where you all are coming from. Ethan, I'm actually really glad to know that you are newer to this film like us. I was also relieved to find out that you all like hate, love, hate the movie when I wasn't sure what the premise was when you all proposed this. So I sat down to watch it. And as the first like 10 to 15 minutes washed over me, I was like, my heart was breaking because I was trying to imagine how I was going to come to the podcast with like young people who love this as young people. And like, I'm so glad to find out it's not that. So anyways, let's talk a little bit
Imagine
more
if we
about,
were like, no, this is a great movie. And we love it. Please
like
be
kind
nice
of,
to us.
you loved fairies and it was just the right kind of thing for you. I wasn't sure. I'm grateful to know it's not exactly that. But let's talk a little bit more about the movie itself and what does or does not succeed about the whole endeavor. I want to start first by keying in on something that Randy already shared, which is this quote from George Lucas that he gave me at least once, if not more. And that's the idea that just like Star Wars was designed for 12-year-old boys, Strange Magic was designed for 12-year-old girls. Ethan, as a new watcher to the film in 2025, how do you feel about George Lucas's assessment of the film?
I am a massive Star Wars fan, one of my favorite fandoms to be a part of. I love George Lucas. Sometimes, as any Star Wars fan, keep him far away from any dialogue, but in romance. So I think, stories can be for anyone. I think, I don't know what he was really getting at with, this design for 12-year-old girls in mind, especially considering, this is a jukebox musical, but half the songs aren't even contemporary. I mean, you've got some Beyonce, one of my favorite musical numbers is, not even a number, but the Lady Gaga's Bad Romance being used as the marching band theme. But beyond
Very
that, like, I
You
don't
beat
know.
me to it.
We can expand on that later, but it's really strange because I feel like there isn't something, to kind of appeal to those 12-year-old girls. And, just a few years prior, in 2013, I believe, we have Frozen. And I thought what was kind of interesting is there's some kind of parallels between Elsa and Anna with the two princesses, Marianne and Dawn, in this movie, even down to their colors. I mean, Dawn has I believe the light blue, and Marianne kind of has like Anna's colors. So I thought like that was kind of an interesting contrast I was seeing too. And kind of same kind of like twist twist romance kind of ends up the villain with Voland, similar to the villain in Frozen. So
Friggin' Hans. Hate that guy. Great call out that the music does not align with the vision for 12-year-old girls, at least not like the contemporary 12-year-old girls at the time this film came out. Bella, anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, something that I feel bad about this statement that George Lucas made. I think I also read somewhere that he was like, I made Star Wars for my sons and I made Strange Magic for my daughter. That I don't know if that's fact checked or not, but I feel bad for his daughter. He should have worked harder to get. Maybe she really liked fairies, and this was the best he could do. But also like that like hurts to hear as like a 12-year-old girl who like loved Star Wars a lot. Like to know that it wasn't made for me kind of sucks. Um and like Ethan said, I agree with everything Ethan said, but something that I think a lot about in this movie is that the only thing to really do in this movie is to fall in love and get married. And what a crazy message to send 12-year-old girls. And then also like something I've been thinking about is like a lot of modern Disney movies that have been coming out are like no love at all. There's no love interest. And if you even think about a love interest, you're crazy. We don't do that anymore. It's 2025 and women can't fall in love, which I think is also kind of crazy. Like, I think there could be a balance between the two. Like, I think it's okay to have a little romance in your storybook, whatever movie. But this movie is like completely the other way. Modern Disney's going this way. It's just like there's no in between. So it was really interesting to think about the two trends that way.
Yeah, great call out. And I'm sure like hearing him name Star Wars as a thing for a group is disappointing at best. Julia, what about you?
It's so crazy because I did not know that it was like for his daughter until after I watched it the first time. And I feel like this movie only works as a cult classic if you view it with like a satirical lens. Like you have to view this movie as like, oh, the writing is intentionally horrible. Oh, it's like these like, these jokes are intentionally inappropriate. And it is being bad on purpose to make fun of the genre. Like that, if that is where the movie, I think, would be a better movie if that was the intention going in, if it was like a commentary. But it's not. It's you know, it it's filled with songs that are so expensive and, that are thrown in there in a really odd way. And it's filled with like dialogue that does not make sense and is really like, honestly, if you told me AI wrote this movie, I'd believe you. Um, and but it's also stunning to look at. Like it still holds up. Like I was looking at it and I was like, oh wow, the lighting is really good in this shot. And like it's actually a really beautifully made film. But like the designs are problematic for a lot of the characters. Like even though there's a lot of beauty in like the way everything was created, like there's like some problematic things going on with the character design. And I feel like this movie can't decide what it is, and that's why it failed, is because it has one foot trying to be something for children, but then none of it is made towards children except for maybe the premise. And then the rest of it is like making fun of itself, but not committing to making fun of itself.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is like almost like the movie was made for 12-year-old girls by a room of 50-year-old men.
Oh,
right? Like
yeah.
people who've never been a 12-year-old girl. And it would succeed if they were doing that on purpose. Like imagine if just the worst, most uninformed group of people made a movie for girls. And, let's have a laugh at that.
If it was like Barbie, it might be better, but nothing is as good as Barbie. So
no. Randy, anything to add?
Kris, you kind of just made my point for me. My note here was that this was not a movie for a 12-year-old girl. It was a movie for a 50 to 60 something year old man. If it's true that this was in development for over 15 years by the time it was made, I'm thinking about George Lucas being a similar age to my own father. He's a few years older than my dad was. My sisters were around 12 and 14 years old when he would have started conceiving of this movie. And it was very much like what a dad would have been doing at that time. Like we're in the 90s with all the people making stuff, looking back on what was cool 30 and 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. Much like my elder millennial generation is forcing all the stuff that we loved 30 years ago on new generations, right? It's a cyclical thing. So like he's got these, in some case, like awesome tracks, like awesome 60s tracks and things that he's bringing into the film that are really classic. And then there's like someone else coming in to consult to bring in this modern music, it seems, but it all happened like 15 years too late. And if it ever had a chance of landing, we missed the boat.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very well said. I think the best thing I could say about this quote, and I think I read it, he's got three girls, one of whom was like only 18 months old when this film debuted, and one that was older, one in the middle. The best thing I could possibly guess is that, like, or hope for, is that he made this movie for, somebody said it earlier, Bella, I think you said it earlier, for his 12-year-old girls. Like, hopefully this is like exactly full of stuff that they like loved when they were young. You know, like the mushrooms and the fairies. I hope that they had notebooks full of sketches, and like somehow he knows his daughters well enough that this is for them, because to everybody here's point, it's not for all 12-year-old girls at all by any means. So
Yeah.
that's the best I could hope for.
You know, I can shout out, at the very least, if he wants to draw a connection to Star Wars versus this movie, I did appreciate the very blatant Jedi training sequence when a blindfolded Marianne is trying to fend off objects coming at her from all directions, for sure. But yeah, speaking of George Lucas, you know, obviously he cites A Midsummer Night's Dream as a big influence here, where we've got a love potion and we've got, you know, the quote unquote wrong people falling in love. The parallels there are pretty clear to see. As I was reading up on this, the creative team, of course, mentioned Star Wars. They mentioned things like Beauty and the Beast, and those are certainly all in there. But I'm going to ask everyone to tell me a little bit about, like, which of these references jumped out to you, and what other pop culture references helped you interact with and understand this film. And Kris, I'm going to throw it back at you first.
Oh, for me, that's so nice.
Yeah.
So I was interested to read his quote and hear him mention Midsummer, because that's certainly there, like with the love potion and like the one mixed up, the one person falls in love with the wrong person. But that wasn't the Shakespeare that I was getting from this when I was first watching. It was giving me more Taming of the Shrew. I was getting more, like, specifically 10 Things I Hate About You does Taming of the Shrew. Like, I was getting Cat Stratford here as I was watching this, especially when they start to, the Marion and the Bog King start to vibe a little bit. All the wonderful tension that's there that builds into respect and then eventually admiration. That was all working for me in that context. When I was able to see that reference and frame it that way, I thought it worked pretty well.
Let's see. Julia, how about you? Which of these references jump out to you, or which ones were more formative for you?
You know, the lovely and horrible thing about jukebox musicals is that I've seen a lot of them. I went to college for musical theater, and I actually am not a huge fan of jukebox musicals, because the number one issue I have is that when you hear a song that you already know, your brain immediately jumps to where else you've heard it before. And the one of the very first things that pops out to me is Ella Enchanted, because that is another jukebox musical. And it's a other very similar, I would say, genre aimed towards young women, jukebox musical. Oh no, don't fall in love. There's potions involved. There's curses involved. There's witches and everything involved. And so I hear the echoes of that. Definitely A Midsummer Night's Dream, but less direct, I want to say, movie parallels, more as like they're trying to capture a vibe in a bottle. Like they're trying to catch this entire movement in one film. It's like, again, these 50-year-olds are like, what are these kids like nowadays? Oh, makeup and edgelords and maybe a fight or two. Yeah, let's put it in a movie. Kristen Chenoweth, let's put her in too. And I think really, I don't really know who was on the design team, but I think that it was kind of like a big collage of like, and this, and let's add that.
Ethan, what were some of your key cultural references as you absorbed this film yesterday?
Yeah, well, first off, Kris, I'm really glad you shouted out 10 Things I Hate About You. I've been on early 2000s rom-com binge, so that was top of my mind. I was getting Beauty and the Beast from the romance, but I find the Star Wars comparison Lucas, the producers of the movie made, really interesting, because Star Wars has a beautifully complex, in-depth universe, but you don't get that from A New Hope. Lucas just plops you in, and kind of like nothing's really known about the universe, but it's a simple fight between good versus evil, the rebellion versus the empire, and that's easy enough for the audience to understand. In this movie, it's a bit of a tougher ask. The movie really doesn't explain anything. Why are the elves and fairies in a kingdom together? Why is the Bog King evil? Why does Roland want the army? Especially because the fairy army doesn't seem to win any fight whatsoever in the movie. So it doesn't really explain anything, and because of that, as a viewer, I find myself not really understanding the stakes, not really understanding like why any of this matters. I have like maybe a hot take. We'll get into this maybe later. Like the entire character of Sunny can just be cut, and the elves can be cut. Like there's just so many like inconsistent plot threads that the viewer is kind of left thinking about like, why does this matter?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, if you're going to make all these references, maybe you're not doing yourself a favor if you didn't live up to the source material. Bella, how about for you?
Yeah, I agree with everybody here. Yeah, I think one of my notes that I wrote down to Ethan's point was like the world just feels so small. Like the only thing to do is fall in love, I guess, and go to dances and sit around if you're the Bog King, I guess. But also there's only like two countries, I guess, like the fairy world and the dark forest, and just like I don't know. It's just like it's very flat. It's very two-dimensional, flat. But something else I thought of in like a cultural reference watching this movie, and I don't know, seeing that like seems like they drafted it a long, long time ago, but there was this other movie that came out when we were probably like a little younger, not teenagers, but kids. Epic. Do you guys remember that? And it's pretty good. It's like it's like another fairy kind of movie, but it's like this girl, and it's like set in the same like 3D animation, but it's this girl. It's like Spiderwick Chronicles actually. Like she gets sucked into the fairy world, and they have all these like adventures, and Colin Farrell is there, and Rihanna is there, and it's just like I think it does what this movie wanted to do in a better way. So I think that they might have probably seen that movie and like, I don't know, made some change. This is my my theory, my hypothesis of what happened. Maybe they had something else cooking. They saw that movie and was like, we gotta make it more like that movie, but they did not succeed at all.
It was also right on the tails of all the Tinkerbell movies too.
Oh my god, yeah,
Those were
Pixie Hollow,
really
yeah.
big.
It was like
the animated
shout
Tinkerbell
out,
series.
shout out,
Oh, the
Pirate Fairy.
Oh,
Pirate Fairy.
shout out
Pirate
Pirate Fairy, absolutely.
The Secret of the Wings.
Yes,
So good.
Good stuff.
which was a huge industry at the time. There was I remember playing like the Pixie Hollow online as a
The
kid.
books are so good.
I read the books. I loved there's a huge, I think, boom around that, which is probably when they started. If they were making this movie for 15 years or however long they were making this movie, they're probably in development during like the peak Pixie Hollow years.
That's such a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm full of those.
Okay.
Yes, and if you were not aware, Kris is the world's greatest girl dad. So he's got some of that really excellent knowledge of the Tinkerbell world and universe. He's always coming at me with the great recommendations. Bella, I was also thinking in terms of like parallel development and similar stories. But before I hit you with my biggest connection, just a few like quick shout outs. Listen, I love Kristen Chenoweth. She is insane in the best possible way. She was such a blast recently on like the Wicked press tour, even though she only has the cameo appearance. She gave this incredible interview where she was talking about her friendship with Ariana Grande, and she said that they both have voices like dolphins. She was like making fun of both of their voices together, coming together as a team. So like I was just feeling that energy, and that was a good vibe I was getting. The Bog King gave us a little like Captain America, I can do this all day at one point, which gave me a little chuckle. And then Kris, I don't know if this hit you, but I don't know if my former students are Owl House fans, but Kris and I love that show. We did a 4-part series on it. And when Marianne gives a full Owl House worthy bye, I could not have been happier. That just really sealed it.
She was insecure about it, but I enjoyed it also.
Fair enough. But no, actually, my weightiest reference I had here is at one point I got like the lightest vibes in the world of Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti from 1862, which, you know, I don't need to get in like deep into like the feminist themes of that. Strange Magic certainly does not go there or cover the same ground. I'm not trying to make a one-for-one comparison here, but in that story, you do have a pair of sisters, and one of them is feeling drawn to this goblin market. She partakes of the fruit, becomes obsessed, yada yada yada. Her sister goes to get the fruit for her, and it manages to save her sister from wasting away and dying. I do not in any way think anyone on the creative team was thinking about it. I am admittedly basing this largely on the Sugar Plum Fairy asking for a Tangelo at one point, which got me thinking of fruit. But there's almost like a reverse Goblin Market thing going on here, where like the little sister has to learn to accept and understand the thing that's scary to her, which was kind of a cool thing. I'm certainly giving it more credit than it deserves, but I loved that my mind went there. But my big parallel was Trolls. 1 year later, we get the original Trolls movie. And, you know, I'm sure they were in development at parallel times. I'm not trying to say that Trolls lifted straight from this movie. But this whole time I was like, wow, Trolls is almost like, what if you took the broad strokes of this and made it marketable? And it's not a perfect movie, but they have, you know, like captured these different worlds, a bright, cheery one and a dark world. There's this like cohesion to the music and the sound and the vibe that they were able to extend into a sequel. They're able to play with some of these same edgelord vibes and everything, but it's like they got the right PR team in there to shift it into something that could make a ton of money, right down to like the silly, playful scrapbook, not quite real world of Trolls versus this highly stylized, highly realistic, but only occasionally successful 3D thing we got here. So, whew. All right, quick
Bog
edit
King
moment.
walked so that Branch could run. I
So
think.
well said.
Who wishes he was the Bog King?
Do not do
Amen.
Branch dirty right now, Bella. I know where you live. Thank you.
Whoa. Okay, that was actually more fruitful than I expected. There was more pop culture and literary stuff happening here, even if it was like mostly our brains making it happen. It was there. Randy already highlighted that this thing was an absolute box office flop, and I think we've all done a pretty good job of illustrating kind of why up to this point. But I would love to hear like just one tight point from everybody on the panel. Give me one like standout, really bugs you thing about this movie that you think contributed to its overall failure. Julia, we'll go to you first.
Not so much I think it contributed to the failure, but something that definitely stuck out to me. And I have a love-hate relationship with this, because if they did it intentionally, like at like a mocking way, then I'm like, this is a bad thing. But me as a queer teenager ate it up, if I view it the other way. But there are a lot of jokes and a lot of moments in this movie where they're like implying like a homoeroticism between like these supporting cast characters, and or poking fun at them. Specifically, there are these like two little goblins that are like the footmen for the Bog King, which also, speaking of parallels, like parallel the two creatures in Hercules that support Hades.
Yeah, great one.
And
They're called Bang and Stuff, Julia.
okay,
Sorry.
well, I'm
All
awful with
right,
names.
all right.
Thank you so much. All right.
Well,
all right.
I love their names. Anyway.
Okay, anyway. And they kind of like play this entire movie as like, oh, they're the ones being abused, they're the ones that are like always messing up, and they're the servants and blah. And then right at the end, like one of them is like, oh, you smell so good. And we're like, everyone can love everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a fairy loving a frog. It doesn't matter if you're a squirrel loving a toad. Anyone can love anyone. Love wins. And then they're like, oh, these two goblins are kind of like, getting closer together. And like, he's like, you smell good. Is that cologne? He's like, no. Is it new body wash? No. And then he's like, oh, it's perfume. He's like, what are you, a girl? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, okay. Like, at first I thought slay gay trolls. Then I'm like, oh, trans troll? Transgender troll? Or like, what is going on here? Is this a joke? Like, are we trying to like, I'm like, the moral of the story is like, love wins. True love saves the day, no matter what it looks like. Why are we subverting that also by making fun of it at the same time?
Yeah.
There are a couple other moments as well with Roland and Sunny where they're like, don't look at me like that. And like the weird thruple with the lizard, where they also kind of take some weird cheeky jokes at like, don't be gay, guys. And I'm like, that's a very odd tone to take with a movie whose entire theme, is love each other and accept each other, especially also from the father too. When the king who's like, you can love anyone you want, honey, except for that one.
Yeah.
Except for that one. And I'm like, I think George Lucas has accidentally became the king of like Fairyland or whatever by doing that in the end.
Yeah. Oh, George, you let us down.
Yeah.
Great call-outs. Bella, anything that you want to add?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, but I really think the musical aspect, making this a jukebox musical, but just like, I don't know why, but like, I love Alan Cumming. He does not sound good in this.
Right?
He's not eating. This is not cabaret. So I really feel like, and I really feel like it would have been so much better and shorter, if they just cut the songs and made it not a musical. So I really feel like that was the flop, was making it a jukebox musical. And I love, unlike some people on the panel, I love a jukebox musical. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree. He should have gone like all the way. I think I read this was supposed to be all singing, no dialogue, pure rock opera. And he walked that back, introduced the dialogue, introduced more plot, and we ended up with a jukebox. I think to your point, he should have gone all the way and had a handful of like musical accompaniments to a relatively straightforward narrative film. Ethan, what do you got?
Well, that's kind of funny you say that because I always think about that famous George Lucas when he's watching the clips of Phantom Menace. I might have gone a little bit far in some points, and I guess he learned his lesson with this movie. But I have the same point as Bella. I think we pointed out, the plot kind of stinks at some points and whatnot. But even, for a jukebox musical, you can have a bad plot, but if the music is good, it's still a good movie. And that's not the case with this one. Like Bella, I thought, what if they just cut the songs? But I think there could have been more fitting songs, and also more specifically, the editing and transitions between the songs just don't work. It's really awkward. It takes you fully out of the plot. And I think, she brought up a great point about Alan Cumming, the Bog King's villain song. I'm blanking on what it's actually called, but it's really, a lot of this songs, and especially this one, doesn't really hype you up. And compared to like other villain songs like Be Prepared, I've Got Friends on the Other Side, like a villain song should hype you up, hype the villain up. And that really didn't do it, nor did any other song in the movie like kind of give me energy to want to finish the movie. Of course I did because of this, but
a really, really great point. None of the songs are giving life at any point. Even the more recognizable songs aren't hitting. They're not cashing in on the cachet of the tunes. Some of them are downright unrecognizable in their arrangement. Yeah, really poorly executed. You going to explode, Julia?
I'm going to explode. Because also, Ethan, I'm so happy you brought that up. Because again, like there are so many musicals where usually your villain has an I want song. Your hero, your heroine has an I want song. And their song is about what their goal is, what they desire, what they want to achieve, what's their super objective. And the Bog King song is mistreated, where he's not actually talking about what he wants. He's talking about how much it sucks that he's been mistreated. He's whining the whole time about like, he's pretty much throwing himself a little pity party. And I think that's why it fails. Like, it's not like, poor unfortunate souls. It's not, it's not Friends on the Other Side. It's not even like the Gaston. There's so many, like, those are very clear, strong songs where we get a sense of what these characters want. And the entire, I think, point of the Bog King is that he doesn't want to tell people what's going on. And he's upset about it and complains about it and makes it everybody else's problem. I think that's why he's a weak villain.
Well said. I hate Gaston with a fiery passion, but his song absolutely rules.
Awesome.
I think for me, the only one super unsuccessful feature of this film is that it gets everything I know and love about the Fae world and about some of the familiar genre beings that are here, trolls and elves and otherwise. It gets them all wrong. The scale is all wrong. And it frustrates me to no end. Why is Sunny an elf the same size or smaller than the fairies? I don't understand. I've never been in a realm like this before, and I didn't enjoy that about it. It was off-putting. There was no scale to my magical creatures. Why are trolls and goblins and elves and fairies all sort of like bug-sized creatures?
And why are our fairies these all these very pale, white, beautiful creatures? And then the main Sunny, who is our only POC character in the entire main cast, is constantly being you're frumpy. He has a whole song where he's I'm not right. She'll never love me. I'm, Roland's you're ugly. You're not cool. And I'm whoa, we're really digging on our only POC character right now and telling him that he, the only way he'll find the love of his life is through drugging someone. And, and also they make him sing a reggae song too,
yes.
on top of that.
Tropey.
And I'm something I love about the Feywild is how diverse it is and how you have so many cool opportunities for interesting fairies, beautiful sunflowers. There's so many opportunities to have really cool designs, especially the moths being the male fairies being moth wings, right? And they really just kind of leaned into every stereotype that they possibly could. And I think that's part of what makes it.
And none of them. And none of them, because some of these things were unrecognizable as I was expecting them to be. So, anyways.
Yeah, just a quick jumping off point. While we were enjoying this movie in high school, I was really getting into Holly Black, which is one of my favorite authors ever. And she wrote Spiderwick Chronicles, which is sort of about this, the goblins and stuff. But she also writes a lot of young adult books about fairies and creatures, and she does her homework and she does such a good job, and they're horrifying. I love them so much, but they're scary. And so I think watching this movie and then reading those books at the same time really diminished this movie for me, because I was this is no sauce compared to Miss Holly Black.
All right, yeah, I'll share one more little beef with the movie, and that is just the timetable making no sense. We call off the wedding, and as far as I could tell, it was that evening, and all of a sudden we're talking about this broken engagement, it happened 5 years ago, and can't you give Roland another chance now? That really threw me, and then I wound up rewinding the movie when we went from the spring ball to the spring dance. And I think, we'll probably get into this later when we talk about edits, but yeah, that tied into a whole lore building issue for me. But listen, on Media Lit, we are usually here just loving something so much that I have to torture our guests into critiquing it. We've had no trouble finding flaws in this film. We've celebrated why it meant something to Bella and Julia, especially in their teenage years, but I want to take a moment just looking at this piece of art, and I would love to hear everyone share one moment or one thing about the movie that succeeds for them. A moment you had fun, a moment you enjoyed, or it could be a broader element of the film. Ethan, what's something that worked for you, and what was a rough watch overall for you?
Yeah, I keep ragging on George Lucas. I'm going to do it one more time. I love the prequel trilogy, which, speaking of, feel free to bring me back for the 20th anniversary retrospective special on Revenge of the Sith if you guys do one. But the prequel trilogy has, issues with the overall plot that I feel could have been fixed with some adjustments. And I kind of feel the same here. I like the very vague concept of the plot they've got going on here in the sense, like, I like Marianne and the Bog King. I think these are two people who've been, like, had, bad stories with love in the past. They've, turned their back on, potential love interests, and they're kind of in the same spot in life despite being completely different people. I think if they put more emphasis and focus on that, completely get rid of Sunny, and kind of like take the I know we said that the universe was smaller before, but I think they need to keep it smaller to kind of make it more understandable and just keep it more plot and romance driven between Marianne and the Bog King. So I think, like, theoretically, the movie could have worked if it just had a kind of very different plot and different songs.
Sure. Bella, what's one thing that worked for you?
Yeah, I agree with what Ethan said. I think it has good bones. I'm actually going to I know I just clowned on the music a lot, but I really like Roland's country number he does to get Marianne back. Everyone's looking at me crazy. No, I think it's catchy. I hate when she switches to Kelly Clarkson, but I kind of like Roland. I think the voice actor was hitting full speed on the gas, and he was funny, and that song is not that bad. And
yeah, and his hair's doing that thing we both
his
love.
hair's doing the thing, and I don't know, just like when I was rewatching the movie, so much of it I was like, oh, I'm slogging through it. And then he would come on screen and be like kind of crazy, and I'd be like, okay, I'm laughing. Like, so I do think, like, not to be like the Roland stan, but because he sucks, but he's kind of a good villain. Like, he's like a dumb himbo Gaston, but like evil. I guess Gaston's also evil, but
You hate to love him. You hate to love him.
I hate to love him. But I also think the dark forest stuff is cool. I like the mushrooms. I like the minions. I like when they play telephone and that's how they get
Yes.
information. And then I think that's the best bit in the movie is when they mess up what they say, like telephone. It's such a canned bit and I love it.
It's one of my favorite bits. Madagascar 2 does it great in the finale.
That's a good bit. I'll never stop laughing at it.
Julia, what is something that works for you in this movie?
Oh, Randy. Okay, if I may be so bold and a little raunchy here.
Please.
I absolutely love the ending point for the relationship between the Bog King and Marianne. Specifically, thank God Alan Cumming is playing this character because the bisexual panic that this Bog King has the entire time. But like the number one joke that Bella and I made over and over again watching this movie is that Marianne pegs that Bog King, and they like make jokes about it at the end of the movie and about how she is like this dominant woman with a sword, and he's like, "Ooh, I've never seen that before. Maybe I like masculinity in a woman." And it is absolutely hilarious to watch because I'm rooting for it. I'm like, yes, maybe true love and falling in love is just letting your wife peg you, I guess. Maybe that's what this is about. And it's the selling point of the film for me. And it's absolutely crazy to witness. But I also really love, I think the scale and the world building is really neat. I wish I mentioned the moth wings. I really loved seeing moth wing fairies. That was pretty cool. I liked seeing her little rose petal bed. That was very fun. How they played with scale a lot. I thought was really interesting, like on the design aspect of things. And I'll talk about it later, but I love a fight scene and I have issues with how it was made. But if George Lucas is known for everything, it's you got to put a big twirly fantasy fight scene in there. And I wanted more. I wanted more of that. So that's where the movie shines for me.
Beautiful. Kris, what worked for you?
Bella mentioned it really quickly, but since I spent time kind of hating on the way they chose to realize this fantasy world before, I did really love the mushrooms. Like their design it's adorable. Um, they do a nice job of varying the mushrooms quite a bit, so you get like a little bit of diversity within the mushroom group. I don't love that the Bog King comes out and is just murdering them. Fortunately, I know enough about mushrooms that those little growths are probably, it's not the life of that fungus, but they are individuals within the greater body, and they are lost forever, and that's sad. So the fact that I felt that is a success of the film, because I was already really endeared to these little mushrooms and the way they whisper and spread news. That little device, you guys already celebrated it, was wonderful, and they really looked very good. I'm a mushroom forager, and I was tickled by those little buddies.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful, Kris. I was also charmed by the mushrooms. But I mentioned it a couple times already, but I found both Alan Cumming and Kristen Chenoweth just incredibly charming. Love that they let her dig into that full zany energy as the Sugar Plum Fairy. And just when she is totally like fucking with everyone, she's like, well, you keep imprisoning me. So yeah, I'm just going to list off all this random stuff that I want. Like her delivery of that line where she's just like, an eye of newt, a golden lute, a loom and a flute. She's just like evoking all these like vague fairy tale tropes. And I love that. And as the audience, you can tell what she's doing. You can tell that she's full of it. And she just like keeps going on from there. She sneaks in the background later on her list. The key to the dungeon.
Yeah.
Is amongst the list of items. So that was just some really fun magic. You got a powerful performer there, and even though we knocked the Alan Cumming musical performance, I don't know, maybe the bar was just so low. At least I was feeling emotionally connected to him when he was singing. So some of those tended to work for me a little bit better on the whole, even if maybe the overall chops aren't up to par.
Love that for you. I'm going to sneak in one more before I transition us to the next thing, because you know what? I didn't speak up earlier when you all were shading Imp. I think Imp is adorable. I think Imp reminds me of such film icons as Scrat from Ice Age. This little buddy is popping in and out doing mischief the whole time. He gives us a sort of a Shrek reference with the lizard falling in love with Sunny, a la Donkey and the Dragon. So yeah, shout out to Imp. Thank you.
I love our agent of chaos. Like I love that thing, right? My big question is why, and where did he come from? And are there more like him? Or is he a god of some sort? Is he God?
Yeah. You could argue that he was doling out justice. Like, I'm pretty sure that fairy smooching the frog is the very same fairy who was smooching Roland on his wedding day earlier in the film.
Drama.
So
yeah, the Imp is if we're going with our Midsummer Night's Dream analysis, he is our Puck, I would say. Which I also like him. I think the design is great. I always think in my head he's like a bat, like a white albino bat.
He was giving me Batroc from Anastasia.
Anastasia, you're conflating my favorite character.
Yeah, Bartok. Thank you,
Master.
There you go. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about, or we've talked a lot about the music in this film, not always in the most positive light, but there are a bunch of really great tunes speckled throughout, some more successfully than others. But I want to hear from everybody. What is your singular favorite movie moment? We're going to start with Ethan.
Yeah, that must be a criticism to the main tracks of the movie, but I actually thought the kind of background music were the ones I remember the most and the ones that kind of got me off the couch feeling energetic. I'm always a sucker for Barracuda needle drops. You mentioned Shrek earlier, the Shrek 3 Barracuda needle drop when the princesses are fighting. One of my favorite moments in an otherwise bad third installment of the series. Other than that, the bad romance marching moment, another kind of more background song. People Are Strange by The Doors. That's a song I love so much. Forgot the name of it, and thankfully Mr. Lane was right there in the group chat to let me know what song it was. So, the background music was more memorable than the actual songs for me.
Great call out. I love that. Let's go to you, Bella.
So I already mentioned Roland's country number that he sings. He's allowed to sing for 30 seconds, where he's like, "Come on, Marian." I can't believe I sang that. Julia, sing a better note for me. Nope, she's not going to do it.
Come on, Marianne. That
Thank
one?
you.
Like that?
Whoa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks.
I like when he
That's
does
really
that. I
sweet.
think it's good. I hate when she starts singing Kelly Clarkson, even though I like that song. Like Ethan said, I love when they do the People Are Strange into the Dark Forest. That is very 2015 Bella coded because I had just gotten my Jim Morrison 3-disc set CDs to put in my car on the way to school. So I was in my Doors era. This movie actually has my 2 I never want to hear these songs played ever for personal reasons. Can't Help Falling in Love with You and Three Little Birds. Those are good songs, and if those are your favorite songs, I'm sorry, but those are just the songs that my mom would play as alarms my entire life.
Yep.
So whenever I hear them, I'm like triggered into thinking I'm 7 and I have to go to school. So I just really hate when they're played at all. So I don't like that. But I also like Christian Chenoweth's Love is Strange at the end of the movie that plays during the credits. That is a really good rendition.
Cutting some snaps for that one, Bella. What about you, Julia?
I'm gonna bring it back to the fight scene. I can't remember exactly which song was playing when Marianne first confronts the Bog King, where she breaks into his castle. I actually really had a lot of fun with that one. I think it's really my entire job is like fight scenes in theater, and I think that there's a unexplored genre of like musical fights. It's a lot smaller. It's really hard to do really well. And it was just really fun. It was very whirly twirly. Was it accurate? No. Was she two-handing a sword that you're supposed to use one hand on? Absolutely. But like, I think that there was really cool chemistry between them and like a back and forth. I think it was Straight On is what Bella's telling me. I really like that song. And also like, I have to give a shout out to the whole like sugar pie honey bunch moment there, because that also became just an instant joke between me and Bella, where every time we saw each other, it'd be like sugar pie honey bunch. And is it annoying? Yes. But is that why I love it? Also, yes.
It's the sickly sweetness. I get that. Randy, do you have a favorite music moment in this film?
Oh yeah, I mean, there are so many moments in music history that they are trying to pull from here that I do love in most contexts. I Can't Help Myself, aka Sugar Pie Honey Bunch by the Four Tops. We've got Come On Marianne, which is the Four Seasons. And I actually loved what they were trying to go for in that weird mashup, but I hated that they made Come On Marianne country. Because I wanted them to go full doo-wop, and every time they got closer to it, they would like back off, like at the end of the film. I was getting like so hyped up for them to dig into Tell Him by the Exciters, but then they kind of like pulled their foot off the gas before it really got going. I love me some Electric Light Orchestra. I don't know if any of my students have any recollection of me loving to play it in the background. One of my favorite journal entry songs is Starlight by Electric Light Orchestra. I still love that song. I still love their vibe. So when we got the title track, Strange Magic, and we got some like bioluminescent plant life happening, and our relationship that I thought was a fun twist on a movie that I wasn't so sure about. I dug that sequence, and I was happy to hear the song drop. Give me my Electric Light Orchestra.
Nice. I think you guys covered all the songs. So for me, probably my favorite, you already mentioned Ethan, but yeah, People Are Strange, and Bella, you called it out as well. Even though it was more of a background moment, that for me was the most authentic music moment in the entire film. That was the only moment that I'm watching the movie, and I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly the song that you cue right now as he makes his way into the dark forest, and he's supposed to be feeling unsettled and he's unsure as he makes his way in. That was the one like truly honest, authentic music moment I felt. Randy, I was also disappointed when they subverted Tell Him with Wild Thing. It's a really, again, bad version of Wild Thing. That's what falls so flat about this, is that like that should hit. That should be a great subversion of that song. Like I loved when they transitioned to Tell Him, because I love My Best Friend's Wedding, because my mom loves My Best Friend's Wedding, starring Julia Roberts and Dermot Mulroney. And Tell Him is like iconic from that movie. So when they went there, I was like, oh, okay, we're going to do this. This is super familiar. Subverting that would have been great with a quality vocal rendition of Wild Thing. That first Wild Thing, if it had cut in more appropriately, it would have been perfect. But anyways, I was happy they included Tell Him.
Yeah, my palate cleanser after this might have to be Sister Act. It's been a minute, and I could really go for that one.
That is so real.
Yeah. Whew. All right, folks. We have looked this movie over up and down. We found things that didn't work. We found things that did work. But for better or for worse, this movie did make us laugh. Sometimes with a well-crafted joke, sometimes at the expense of the movie. But I was hoping everybody could share one of their favorite moments of humor. Bella, I'm going to throw it back to you. What's one of your favorite moments of humor in this film?
I really like Roland's backup dancers. Sorry, I've been talking so much about Roland, but they have like a bit. They're both like so stupid, right? And I love stupid hench people. Thang and stuff are great. Any of the hench jokes, I'm big fan of. I wish there was more of it.
Beautiful. Kris, what's one of your favorite jokes in this film?
We already talked about the game of telephone, so I won't go back there. I really liked, I know this is stupid, and Sonny deserved better overall. I don't want to discount that. I liked the stupid trope with the lizard that they had previously fought, which still had the blueberry stain on its eye, then falling in love with Sonny, and then like coming to aid them in battle because like we're doing Shrek and the Dragon. They were doing Donkey and Dragon at that point. I was tickled by that. I was here for it. Good, clean fun.
Thank you, Boggy Bear. Ethan, what do you got for me?
Yeah, to echo, I love stupid henchmen, like what Bella said, and I do love especially the Bog King's henchmen. One of them is voiced by one of my favorite comedians, the late great Bob Einstein, aka Super Dave. I heard his voice, I instantly like tipped up my head from the couch, like, oh my god, it's him. So I loved them. I love Julia's Hercules comparison too, because Hades, alongside Yzma, some of my favorite comedic villains, and their henchmen's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Julia, how about for you? What's one of your favorite jokes or moments of humor?
Well, like anything that's like between the Bog King and Marianne, I think is, and subverting gender roles, I think is hilarious. But specifically, I love when they are at the Sugar Plum Fairies like prison, and he's like, "Tell me the antidote." And she's like, "No, I'll never tell you unless this." And then there's an ongoing gag where all Marianne has to say is, "Can you tell me?" And she's like, "Okay." And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, that was hilarious. Like he was really trying, and she just asked one time, and she's like, "Well, why didn't you?" She just liked her better, and I thought that was pretty funny.
Beautiful, and you covered a lot of my favorite ones. A lot of goofy things. All the jokes at Roland's expense are great, but my most perfectly crafted moment, shout out to Maya Rudolph as Griselda, the Bog King's mother. Early on in the movie, we can see that like she just wants her little boy to fall in love. Like that's all she wants in this world. She's bummed that he's like gone to such a dark place. She wants to fix it. So they have this running gag where she has like lined up some potential love interests for him. And like we get kind of a weird sequence later where they all come out, but the first time they introduce the gag, like the lineup of love interest is kind of like just off screen, like in a little tunnel or whatever. And she's like, "Oh, I've got like the most perfect person for you." And you see the figure start to move, and she's just like, "Stay out of the light." Like, like no, no one can set eyes on you. Let me build you up first. Like, we got to do some work here. And just like the comic timing of that, maybe doesn't fully pay off later. Like, as much as I got a kick out of like the like weird mantis bug with the long legs, like kind of posing, just that little stay out of the light bit was maybe the best use of Maya Rudolph in the role in that moment.
Yeah, underused throughout the film.
Underused. What a
Underused.
waste.
Yeah, great
I'll also
stuff.
say randomly, one of my notes is this movie taught me what a boutonniere is. And that is really funny. The boutonniere bit is really funny to me. And Julia and I, when we watched this movie, we were like 15. We had no idea what that is.
You guys did you guys do prom? Did you not have the
It's a corsage.
That's a
isn't
corsage.
it?
No, but doesn't the guy get a
Yeah.
boutonniere?
I don't know.
I will say, Chris, they've
Yeah.
cut they
Well-
were really cutting down on the proms. They have been for a long time. Like, I had a junior and a senior
Right.
prom. By the time these folks came through, it was down to just a senior prom.
And boy, was it disappointing.
They don't like us to have fun.
Sad.
So
Well, I do, and so I'm going to
Thanks,
bring us
Chris.
into the next segment. This is a Medialit original and a favorite of mine. We're going to play Hindsight is 2020. This is where we're not just you don't have the privilege of simply critiquing a thing. You have to offer up a small edit for the film. So one small edit that you might make given the opportunity and why. Bella, will go right to you.
yeah, so something that I think would really help just like speed up the whole process and get people interested in the movie faster is that whole beginning scene where we kind of find out that Marianne is in love and being cheated on. I would just cut that and thread it through the story more. So like we open with her being a badass and like fighting and stuff, and then like through her conversations with the Bog King, we learn that she has been cheated on and like she didn't used to be this way. So we kind of get like a parallel conversation between them, and like when she's opening up to him, it feels like the audience is also being let in on something, and like it feels like we're learning something, and it actually feels like we're not being explained to death. And also like it could be interesting of like, why does she hate Rowan so much? Like, I don't. It just would make it seem a little bit more mysterious, so that we're a little more intrigued. So that would be my small edit.
Love that. You could still have Roland trying to get her back. You know, I think I would miss the Selena Kyle, Michelle Pfeiffer transformation into a badass sequence that we got.
We could still have that, just like maybe later in a
Yeah,
flashback.
I like
part's
that.
cool.
I like that. Ethan, what about you?
It's tough to limit myself to a small edit here because, if I could do a major one, get rid of Sunny, I've even thought, maybe kill off the Bog King at the end, have a kind of sad ending. But
You can get rid
I
of
think
Sunny
just
if you want.
Okay, honestly, get rid of Sunny. I think like he kind of is a comedic relief character that really doesn't land. It also has dark undertones. You hit this with your synopsis, but it's kind of date rapey. I mean, like he's trying to get a love potion to end up with Dawn, and Dawn never showed interest in him whatsoever. Like Dawn at the beginning of the movie, would exchange a look at Sunny, then go flirt with like another guy. Like clearly she wasn't interested. And then at the end she ends up with him. Like what? I think again, get rid of his character and expand more on, Marianne, the Bog King, and get more of Maya Rudolph in there somewhere. And then secondly, get rid of the psychedelic ending.
Nice. Great call. Julia, what about you?
I deeply disagree, Ethan. The psychedelic ending is the only part of this movie that I think is to be
It's very
expanded upon by at least 5 minutes.
Very Star Wars holiday special-esque.
Yes. I think that the main issue with this entire movie is the pacing is whack. It is really it is moving lightning speed. Like my ADHD, unmedicated ADHD in high school, loved this movie because I really was like, wow, it is taking me on a ride, and I don't even have a second to think about the plot because where are we? Like again, I think Randy, you said it in the text thread, like you looked down and then when you looked back up, Marianne was emo. And it's like, when did that happen? And like, there's a lot of conversations to be had about how to make a jukebox musical work, how to make a story aimed towards young women work. But I think that like the pacing is really something I would really want to take a deep look at, because I think it's kind of the core of a lot of problems.
Well said. Yeah, terribly paced film. Randy, you got one?
Yeah, I'm actually going to piggyback off of Ethan a little bit. Let's just say we have to keep Sonny. I don't know that we do, but if we are going to keep him, if we had used a little time at the beginning just to give me one or two scenes that makes me feel anything about Sonny's friendship with Dawn, I think the whole rest of the movie would work way better. Like, we don't really see much of them together. The audience needs to have some reason to want her to rub that love potion dust out of her eyes at the end, to be happy that she's seeing Sonny in a new way. And yeah, I don't have any reason to really care. So there you have it.
Yeah, it's true. They fumbled. Bummer. I got one, and it's small and impactful, and I think it would make the whole movie better. And it's simply that Alan Cumming should be using his natural accent. If the Bog King was just rocking the thickest Scottish brogue, this whole film feels different. The whole film is better. Alan Cumming, natural accent, every time.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right, folks, we're coming down to our last couple of fun little segments that we love to do here on Media Lit. And we're going to do a slightly different take on one of our favorite segments, which is called Do You Ship It? Now, a lot of times this involves me like digging deep between the lines to try to figure out what are some relationships that went unexplored, but that's not a problem in this movie. It has many problems, but it does not fail to ask you to consider some of the different ships that are available. So rather than giving you a list of folks to reflect upon, I really just want to know, which ship do you ship the hardest from this film? There are so many to pick from. It could be a ship that we see endure all the way to the end of the film. It could be a relationship that was teased or they missed out on, that was right there on the page, that you wish had come together. But Julia, I'm reading your face as the most excited. So what is your top ship in this film?
Listen, there are a lot of moments where I'm like, this is wrong. Why did the animators do that? Like, why is there a weird tension between Dawn and Marianne at one point? I'm like, you're sisters. That's a little weird. And there are so many moments like that in this movie where there are like characters like that you don't expect to see having weird moments with each other. But I'm always a fan of like the crack ships, the ones that are just so hilarious and like it could never even be like thought of. I think maybe give me the king, the fairy king, and give me Roland. Fairy King and Roland, or give me Fairy King and give me the Bog King's mother, Maya Rudolph. I want let's make that. Let's turn it into like a.
That's the one.
That's crazy.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, Roland got
fun.
that army just making eyes at the king. He didn't need Marianne to see his vision through. Let's see, Ethan. Which ship do you ship the hardest here?
I feel there's only one right answer here, and it's Marianne and the Bog King. I feel everything else is like an anti-ship for me. So, like, again, I've talking at length about how Dawn and Sunny is really weird and shouldn't have happened. I think maybe teach it as a lesson to young boys out there. Sometimes you don't get the girl. You can save them. Sometimes they just don't love you, but they rather still just be your friend. But yeah, no, I think Marianne and Bog King had an actually kind of like, good chemistry. I wish it was expanded upon. I didn't really get their kind of like romantic montage adventure at the end because he was like, let me take you on an adventure. Let's be adventurous. But like Marianne was always kind of adventurous and bold. And I don't know why in those scenes they kind of showed it to be a bit more like cautious and scared, jumping on the Venus flytraps. But other than that, I think it could have worked.
Love that. Yeah. Yeah, she maybe still hadn't fully adjusted to the dark forest or whatever. Maybe he was just projecting his own fears. But yeah, it's hard to argue with that ship. It's the most compelling piece of this film. Kris, what's your top ship?
I'm going to piggyback right off of Ethan because I think, the right answer is the Bog King and Marianne, but I'm going to go with Marianne and the Dark Forest as the ship that I'm most interested in. I'm excited for the life that she has ahead, exploring this new land, really like tapping deeper into her more goth-like tendencies. I really dig the eyeshadow that she chose. It feels like a color palette that is made for the Dark Forest. The Dark Forest was made for her. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see more of her adventures in that space.
Beautiful. Bella, what's your top ship?
Obviously got to go Bog King Marianne on this one. Yeah, I agree. I really just think they should have immediately met each other and like it should have been a big most of the movie. Once they get together, that's like kind of where it gets interesting to me. They spend so much time doing other things. There's so much movie that's not them and it fucking sucks. And it's not good. But I digress.
Well
I got
done.
that reference.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
You stole my thunder. I was gonna do that too.
You can
Thanks.
still do it.
I would, but I digress.
Okay. Well, but I
You're
digress.
being really polite. This could
yeah,
be a more raucous conversation.
Well, Julia and I are already gonna meet after class in the parking lot and fight about jukebox musicals.
Beautiful.
So.
Listen, I'm just gonna play a little devil's advocate here. Like, I do objectively agree Marianne and the Bog King is the best. However, there was one interaction that I just couldn't quite shake. Now, obviously, we've talked about how troublesome this whole love potion situation is. So just let me preface what I'm saying by this is something that would have to exist beyond the powers of a love potion for me to be okay with it. But there was something to the connection between Dawn and the Bog King. Now, she is under the effects of the love potion. That's not cool. It's not okay. But that's not what I'm really getting at. She is the one that really starts to break him down and melt his heart. And he's got a bit more openness when Marianne comes in and is really the better match. And, I think I would have let it go. But when they have their little forced date situation and they are complaining about how everyone loves love and it's so stupid, and Marianne crushes the boutonniere from Dawn, he's like genuinely crushed. And I was like, maybe there is a way for those two crazy kids to make it work. And Marianne does go off into the dark forest. I don't know. But I'm just going to say Dawn and the Bog King. I mean, Boggy Woggy, Kingy Wingy. Come on.
I think that's a really good point, and I think he does have love for her, but in like a little sister way of like, oh, I'm babysitting this kid, and the kid is super nice, and I'm like miserable, blah blah blah, and like I just felt it gave very like grumpy babysitter and the kid. And like the boutonniere was very like Valentine's Day card that was like, or like a kid's drawing. I don't know, but that's how I read that.
Like Mr. Wilson and Dennis the Menace.
Yes.
Yeah, I will say I was happy to like not feel like the Bog King was like pushing any boundaries within that weird situation. Like there was guilt that she was behaving this way because of the potion, and that was clear. Absolutely.
That was my worry too. It's like, I'm so glad he's taken it in kind of like a much, kind of caring, kind of protective way. And kind of like when he receives the like kind of gift from Dawn, it really reminded me of like the Winter Warlock from like A Santa Claus Is Coming to Town, how he melts his like icy demeanor once he receives the toy train.
In front of the other.
Exactly.
Chris
I will
Kringle.
say, like, this coming back to me randomly is that the Bog King also did use the love potion on that other girl, but she was in love with someone else. So he's not so innocent here.
No, he's grown up. He's learned a lot. That was, he's He's learned a lot. He's made some
Yeah.
mistakes.
Mhm.
Luckily, he's had support in his life. He's got a wonderful mother who stands by him.
Absolutely. All right, Kris, let's grab our souvenirs and get out of here.
It's time. It's time. You folks are all new to the pod, but if you've listened before, you'll know that one of our favorite games is the prop game. Because this is an animated feature, we all have the opportunity in this case to take home one still frame, one image from this film. If you could take one thing home, have it framed, put it on your wall, what would it be? I'm going to go to Julia first. Couldn't tell if that was enthusiasm for the question or just a random thought, but we'll go to you first.
I mean, again, there's so much about this movie that is actually visually stunning. And one moment that really speaks out to my brain is, I'm going to bring it back to the fight scene again. It's the one I enjoyed the most, is that when she was fighting him and she was using her sword and it was clashed against his staff. There's a really beautiful moment where like the light caught on the blade and the camera held it there. I think they wanted us to notice that. And I was like, oh wow, that like actually looks really pretty. And if you took that still out of the film and put it literally anywhere, I think that it would be like a very gorgeous piece. My honorable mention is the really cool like spider's silk prison that the Sugar Plum Fairy is kept in, that Kristen Chenoweth is in. I think that's a really creative concept, and I really enjoyed that as well.
Yeah, I thought that little spider silk trap was dope. When I watched the Bog King actually recapture her with it, totally dope. All right, throwing it to you, Ethan. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember pinpoint the exact moment. I think it might have been during the first fighting montage, but there's a scene where Marianne kind of with her sword flies in front of like a full moon, like over a body of water, and it's a really beautiful shot. I have major qualms about the art style of this movie, but I think there are some scenes that look good, and I think that was one of them.
Great pull. Great pull. All right, Bella, your turn. What's your still image?
Yeah, I think it was one Ethan mentioned. There's like when they're fighting and there's the big full moon behind them and the Bog King and Marianne. I like that. I wish that was more of the vibe of the movie, kind of like a early 2000s new metal, kind of like dark Evanescence Fairytale. Yeah, I wish it was honestly edgier. But I don't like the way this movie's animated at all. I don't like 3D animation. I think it's very Polar Express, Uncanny Valley. But that is a beautiful scene, and they did light it really, really well. I think, so that's nice.
Great call. Great call. Yeah, I don't love this animation. Again, when this first started, I thought you all loved this movie. It was one of the first things that I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to lie. Randy, what is your still image?
I don't know if this is the correct answer, but I'm going to follow my heart, because one of my favorite sequences in the whole movie is that forced date sequence. And it's actually like Evan Rachel Wood's best moment in the movie, because as they are both complaining and expressing their frustration with love, she kind of gets into villain voice a little bit. Like she starts to get that little like rough quality in her voice, and she's kind of going into that like frustrated villain. But before she does that, there's this great moment where they realize what's happening to them. They've been thrown onto this forced date. They realize that Griselda has put together this like heart out of like twine and string, and they see it. And they both just kind of in embarrassment drop to either side of the heart. And it's like this sort of like mid-range shot of them both looking away from each other with this kind of distorted twine heart. And I love that shot. That's the one.
Great call. That's one of the most redeeming things about this film we've pulled out of the conversation tonight. That's a really great call out. I think for me, it's really easy. It is a still frame just as Sonny has made his way past the mushrooms as he's entered the dark forest. I'll know that people are strangers playing in the background, but I want to focus on the
Hmm.
mushrooms beginning to whisper to one another after the little elf has made its way into the dark forest. So that's it for me.
Beautiful. Well, folks, the bell is about to ring. We've got to wrap up the class for the day. Honestly, when I started Media Lit, one of the first conversations I had was with Bella and Julia and Ethan about the possibility of getting them on the show. And I think like just time and scheduling and I was over here trying to figure out exactly what this show was. We didn't get to it right away. I've just been excited to share with the audience, with the podlings, who some of these people are that brought me to a place in my life where I would want to start a podcast called Media Lit. It's because of sharing conversations with these three folks and some other amazing ones. And I'm thrilled I got to share that with all of you. So Bella, Julia, Ethan, thank you so much for being here. I had a total blast and it was such a great reunion. Kris, thank you for letting me kind of geek out over this reunion and maybe not be the most disciplined with time because I was so happy to see my former students. You're a good friend and co-host, my man.
Man, this was awesome. I got to be a little bit more than a fly on the wall for this reunion, and I'm so grateful to have been a part of it. You all were fantastic. Thank you for joining us tonight. You're all honorary podlings now. I hope each and every one of you will come back together, sure, but individually too. It'd be lovely to have you again.
Thanks for having us. And let's meet up in person too one day soon.
Totally.
Yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you for having us. And sorry we made you watch a bad movie.
What a fun trip down memory lane. It was very, very fun. It was nice to see everybody again.
Absolutely.
And thank you to the listening podlings at home. For those of you new to the pod, if you want to keep up with us, make sure you're following the podcast wherever you get your pods, Spotify, Apple, or otherwise. Give us the 5-star ratings and give us a follow. If you want to keep up with the podcast, find out what's coming next. We're on most of the socials, the good and the bad. We're on Instagram at media.lit.pod. We're on the very fantastic Blue Sky at media/-lit. And we are still holding on to the Twitter at media.lit.pod. Find us there. And if you're not a social media person, we've got an email. The inbox is constantly open. We would love to hear from you. Email us at media.slash.lit@gmail.com.
Kris, thank you so much. I thought about getting rid of the Twitter so many times, but then something will happen like my forever crush, Jenny Lewis, reshares our podcast promo on her page, and I can't quite quit it just in case something that magical ever happens again. But more importantly, Kris, we've just been singing your praises as the co-host of Media Lit, but what are other projects you have going out there in the world, and where can people find you?
I'm also the co-host of the Batman by the Numbers podcast on the Pop Break TV feed. It's a monthly podcast where we go deep on all things Batman. This year, we are in our world's finest era. It is the year of Superman. We're getting ready to do a little bit of an Allies draft soon, but the whole year is aiming very quickly towards Superman 2025. So check us out over there on the Pop Break TV feed. I'm also an actor and a voice actor, a father and a husband. You can find me doing those things on Instagram at Kris_Ingersoll. That's Kris spelled like Kringle.
Thank you so much. And I am your host, Randy Elaine. You can also find me on the Pop Break podcast feed, where I am part of a little podcast called Pod of Doom, which is a Black Sabbath appreciation podcast with Justin and Chris Mancini. And you can also find my entertainment writing over at the Pop Break. Most recently, I did full episode by episode coverage of Severance Season 2, including a weekly theory section called Tempering the Evidence. So I've got all that compiled on my webpage. So if you are someone who has finally caught the fever, you are jumping on the Severance train, let me be your guide. You can find me, really just hit the Media Lit webpage, hit us up on the socials. You'll find links to me in all of those places, and you can find links to all of my writing. And yeah, I'd love to hear your takes on Severance and Bluey and Fargo and everything else I've been writing about over there. So that'll do it. Thanks for being here and have a great night.